Petro Oleksiyovych Poroshenko is a Ukrainian businessman and politician who served as the fifth president of Ukraine from 2014 to 2019. Poroshenko served as the Minister of Foreign Affairs from 2009 to 2010, and as the Minister of Trade and Economic Development in 2012. From 2007 until 2012, he headed the Council of Ukraine's National Bank. He was elected president on May 25, 2014, receiving 54.7% of the votes cast in the first round, thus winning outright and avoiding a runoff. During his presidency, Poroshenko led the country through the first phase of the war in Donbass, pushing the Russian separatist forces into the Donbass region. He began the process of integration with the European Union by signing the European Union-Ukraine Association Agreement. Poroshenko's domestic policy promoted the Ukrainian language, nationalism, inclusive capitalism, decommunization, and administrative decentralization. In 2018, Poroshenko helped create the Autocephalous Orthodox Church of Ukraine, separating Ukrainian churches from the Moscow Patriarchate. His presidency was distilled into a three-word slogan, employed by both supporters and opponents: Armia, Mova, Vera. As a candidate for a second term in 2019, Poroshenko obtained 24.5% in the second round, and was defeated by Volodymyr Zelensky. There was no true consensus in the expert community on why Poroshenko lost. Among reasons are cited a rapid decline in the overall quality of life, failure to successfully end the war, failure to stem corruption, several corruption scandals in which Poroshenko or people closely associated with him were involved, a conflict with Ihor Kolomoiskyi which resulted in an anti-Poroshenko campaign by 1+1 Media Group, an information campaign supported by Russia against him, an overall fatigue from Ukrainian political elites, a presidential campaign that was focused almost exclusively on the right-wing and nationalistic population and exploited the patriotism topic at the expense of debates about social and economic situation, and lack of understanding and communication with Ukrainian people. Poroshenko is a People's Deputy of the Verkhovna Rada and leader of the European Solidarity Party. Outside government, Poroshenko has been a prominent Ukrainian oligarch with a lucrative career in acquiring and building assets. His most recognized brands are Roshan, a large-scale confectionery company which has earned him the nickname of Chocolate King, and his TV news channel 5 Kanal, which he was forced to sell to comply with anti-oligarch legislation in November 2021. He is considered an oligarch due to the scale of his business holdings in manufacturing, agriculture, and finance, his political influence from several stints in government prior to his presidency, and his ownership of an influential mass media outlet. Early life and education. Poroshenko's father, Oleksy Poroshenko, was an engineer and later government official who managed multiple factories in the Ukrainian SSR. Little is known about his mother, Yevgenia Saraivina Horkuk, but a Ukrainian newspaper said she was an accountant, who taught at a vocational and technical school of accounting. He also spent his childhood and youth in Tyana, where his father Oleksiy was heading a machine-building plant and where he learned Romanian. In his youth, Poroshenko practiced judo and sambo, and was a candidate for Master of Sport of the USSR. Despite good grades, he was not awarded the normal gold medal at graduation, and on his report card he was given a C for his behavior. After getting into a fight with 4 Soviet Army cadets at the military commissariat, he was sent to army service in the distant Kazakh Soviet Socialist Republic. In 1989, Poroshenko graduated, having begun studying in 1982. With a degree in economics from the International Relations and Law Department at the Kyiv University. At this university he was friends with Mikhail Saakashvili, who he would appoint as governor of the Odessa Oblast in May 2015 and who is a former president of Georgia. In 1984, Poroshenko married a medical student, Marina Perevidentseva. Their first son, Oleksiy, was born in 1985. From 1989 to 1992, Poroshenko was an assistant at the university's International Economic Relations Department. While still a student, he founded a legal advisory firm mediating the negotiation of contracts in foreign trade, and then he undertook the negotiations himself, starting to supply cocoa beans to the Soviet chocolate industry in 1991. At the same time, he was deputy director of the Republic Union of Small Businesses and Entrepreneurs, and the CEO Exchange House Ukraine. Poroshenko's brother, Mikhailo, older by 8 years, died in a 1997 car accident under mysterious circumstances. Business career. In 1993, Poroshenko, together with his father Oleksiy and colleagues from the Road Traffic Institute in Kyiv, created the Ukroprom Invest Ukrainian Industry and Investment Company, which specialized in the confectionery and automotive industries. Poroshenko was Director General of the company from its founding until 1998, when in connection with his entry into parliament he handed the title over to his father, while retaining the title of Honorary President. Between 1996 and 1998, Ukroprom Invest acquired control over several state-owned confectionery enterprises which were combined into the Russian Group in 1996, creating the largest confectionery manufacturing operation in Ukraine. His business success in this industry earned him the nickname Chocolate King. Poroshenko's business empire also includes several car and bus factories, Kuznia na Rybalskому shipyard, the 5-canal television channel, as well as other businesses in Ukraine. Although not the most prominent in the list of his business holdings, the assets that drew much recent media attention, and often controversy, are the confectionery factory in Lipetsk, Russia, that became controversial due to the Russian military intervention in Ukraine, the Sevastopol marine plant that has been confiscated after the 2014 Russian forcible annexation of Crimea, and the media outlet 5-Canal, particularly because of Poroshenko's repeated refusal to sell an influential media asset following his accession to presidency. According to Poroshenko, since becoming president of Ukraine he has relinquished the management of his businesses, ultimately to a blind trust. Billionaires lists rankings. In March 2012, Forbes placed him on the Forbes list of billionaires at 1,153rd place, with $1 billion. As of May 2015, Poroshenko's net worth was about $720 million, losing 25% of his wealth because of Russia's ban of Russian products and the state of the Ukrainian economy. According to the annual ranking of the richest people in Ukraine, published in October 2015 by the Ukrainian journal Novoye Vremya and conducted jointly with Dragon Capital, a leading investment company in Ukraine, President Poroshenko was found to be the only one from the top 10 list whose asset value grew since the previous year's ranking. The estimate of his assets was set at $979 million, a 20% growth, and his ranking increased from 9th to 6th wealthiest person in Ukraine. The article observed that Poroshenko remained one of the only 2 European leaders who owned a business empire of such scale, with Silvio Berlusconi of Italy being the other. A total of €450 million is kept in an Amsterdam-based company registered in Cyprus, as a result of which his effective tax rate is 5% rather than the statutory tax rate of 18% in Ukraine. The company is likely to be worth much more, as the annual accounts published by the Dutch Chamber of Commerce only contain the book value of the shares, which is very likely to be lower than the market value. After his election, Poroshenko lost the billionaire status as his net worth dropped by 40% to reach $705 million. Associated businesses. A number of businesses were once part of the Ukroprom Invest, which Poroshenko headed in 1993-1998. The investment group was dissolved in April 2012. Poroshenko has stated that upon beginning his political activity he passed on his holdings to a trust fund. Bogdan Group, centered in Cherkasy. Russian Group. 5 Kanal and Priamyi television channels. Kuznia na Rybalskому shipyard in Kyiv. International Invest Bank, owned through a trust and along with Ihor Kononenko. Ukrprom Investagro, an agrarian holding. Zoria Podaya, an agrarian company near Hysin, specializing in sugar production from sugar beets. Podaya. Mas Agro. Arofirma Dniprorulan. Arofirma Ivankivsy. Sevastopol Shipyard. Early political career. Poroshenko first won a seat in the Verkhovna Rada in 1998 for the 12th single-mandate constituency. He was initially a member of the United Social Democratic Party of Ukraine, the party led by Viktor Medvedchuk and loyal to President Leonid Kuchma at the time. Poroshenko left SDPU in 2000 to create an independent left-of-center faction and then a party, naming it Party of Ukraine's Solidarity. In 2001 Poroshenko was instrumental in creating the Party of Regions, also loyal to Kuchma, the Party of Ukraine's Solidarity having merged into the Party of Regions. Poroshenko launched a new party with a similar name, the Party Solidarity. Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council. In December 2001, Poroshenko broke ranks with Kuchma supporters to become campaign chief of Viktor Yushchenko's Our Ukraine bloc opposition faction. After parliamentary elections in March 2002 in which Our Ukraine won the biggest share of the popular vote and Poroshenko won a seat in parliament, Poroshenko served as head of the Parliamentary Budget Committee, where he was accused of misplacing 47 million. As a consequence of Poroshenko's Our Ukraine bloc membership, tax inspectors launched an attack on his business. Despite great difficulties, Ukrprom Invest managed to survive until Yushchenko became president of Ukraine in 2005. Poroshenko was considered a close confidant of Yushchenko, who is the godfather of Poroshenko's daughters. Poroshenko was likely the wealthiest oligarch among Yushchenko supporters, and was often named as one of the main financial backers of Our Ukraine and the Orange Revolution. After Yushchenko won the presidential elections in 2004, Poroshenko was appointed Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council. In September 2005, highly publicized mutual allegations of corruption erupted between Poroshenko and Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko involving the privatizations of state-owned firms. Poroshenko, for example, was accused of defending the interests of Viktor Pinchuk, who had acquired state firm Nikopol Ferroalloy for $80 million, independently valued at $1 billion. In response to the allegations, Yushchenko dismissed his entire cabinet of ministers, including Poroshenko and Tymoshenko. State prosecutors dismissed an abuse of power investigation against Poroshenko the following month, immediately after Yushchenko dismissed Sviatoslav Piskin, general prosecutor of Ukraine. Piskin claimed that he was sacked because he refused to institute criminal proceedings against Tymoshenko and refused to drop proceedings against Poroshenko. In the March 2006 parliamentary election, Poroshenko was re-elected to the Ukrainian parliament with the support of Our Ukraine electoral bloc. He chaired the Parliamentary Committee on Finance and Banking. Allegedly, since Poroshenko claimed the post of chairman of the Ukrainian parliament for himself, the Socialist Party of Ukraine chose to be part of the Alliance of National Unity because it was promised that their party leader, Alexander Moros, would be elected chairman if the coalition were formed. This left Poroshenko's Our Ukraine and their ally Yulia Tymoshenko bloc out of the government. Poroshenko did not run in the September 2007 parliamentary election. Poroshenko started heading the Council of Ukraine's National Bank in February 2007. Between 1999 and 2012 he was a board member of the National Bank of Ukraine. Foreign Minister and Minister of Trade. Ukrainian President Yushchenko nominated Poroshenko for Foreign Minister on October 7, 2009. Poroshenko was appointed by the Verkhovna Rada on October 9, 2009. On October 12, 2009, President Yushchenko reappointed Poroshenko to the National Security and Defense Council. Poroshenko supported Ukrainian NATO membership, and said NATO membership should not be a goal in itself. Although Poroshenko was dismissed as foreign minister on March 11, 2010, President Viktor Yanukovych expressed hope for further cooperation with him. In late February 2012, Poroshenko was named as the new Minister of Trade and Economic Development in the Azarov government. On March 9, 2012, President Yanukovych stated he wanted Poroshenko to work in the government in the post of Economic Development and Trade Minister. On March 23, 2012, Poroshenko was appointed Economic Development and Trade Minister of Ukraine by Yanukovych. The same month he stepped down as head of the Council of Ukraine's National Bank. Poroshenko claims that he became Minister of Trade and Economic Development to help bring Ukraine closer to the EU and get Yulia Tymoshenko released from prison. After he took the post, tax inspectors launched an attack on his business. Return to Parliament. Poroshenko returned to the Verkhovna Rada after the 2012 Ukrainian parliamentary election after winning as an independent candidate in single-member district number 12 located in Vinnytsia Oblast. He did not enter any faction in parliament and became member of the Committee on European Integration. Poroshenko's father Oleksii did intend to take part in the elections too in single-member district number 16, but withdrew his candidacy for health reasons. In mid-February 2013, Poroshenko hinted he would run for mayor of Kyiv in the 2013 Kyiv mayoral election. In 2013, the registration certificate of solidarity was cancelled because it had not participated in any election for more than 10 years. Poroshenko then launched and became leader of the National Alliance of Freedom and Ukrainian Patriotism Offensive, which was renamed All-Ukrainian Union Solidarity. 2014 Ukrainian Revolution. Poroshenko actively and financially supported the Euromaidan protests between November 2013 and February 2014, leading to an upsurge in his popularity, although he did not participate in negotiations between then-President Yanukovych and the Euromaidan parliamentary opposition parties Batkivshkina, Svoboda, and UDAR. In an interview with Lally Weymouth, Poroshenko said, "From the beginning, I was one of the organizers of the Maidan. My television channel Channel 5 played a tremendously important role. At that time, Channel 5 started to broadcast. There were just 2,000 people on the Maidan. But during the night, people went by foot 7, 8, 9, 10 kilometers. Understanding this is a fight for Ukrainian freedom and democracy. In 4 hours, almost 30,000 people were there." The BBC reported, Mr. Poroshenko owns 5-Kanal TV, the most popular news channel in Ukraine, which showed clear pro-opposition sympathies during the months of political crisis in Kiev. Poroshenko refused to join the Yatsenyuk government, nor did he join any of the two newly created parliamentary factions Economic Development and Sovereign European Ukraine. On April 24, 2014, Poroshenko visited Luhansk, at the time not controlled by Ukrainian authorities. Just like previously in Crimea, he was met by a blockade of hundreds of pro-Russian locals at Luhansk airport. Poroshenko later claimed, "When I traveled to Luhansk Oblast, my car was fired at and there was an attempt to take our entire group hostage." 2014 Presidential Campaign. Following the 2014 Ukrainian Revolution and the resulting removal of Viktor Yanukovych from the office of President of Ukraine, new presidential elections were scheduled to take place on May 25, 2014. In pre-election polls from March 2014, Poroshenko garnered the most support of all the prospective candidates, with one poll conducted by Sosis giving him a rating of over 40%. On March 29 he stated that he would run for president. At the same time Vitaly Klitschko left the presidential contest, choosing to support Poroshenko's bid. On April 2, Poroshenko stated, "If I am elected, I will be honest and sell the Russian concern." He also said in early April that the level of popular support for the idea of Ukraine's joining NATO was too small to put on the agenda so as not to ruin the country. He also vowed not to sell his 5-canal television channel. On April 14, Poroshenko publicly endorsed the campaign of Yaroslaw Gowin's party Poland Together of neighboring Poland in that year's elections to the European Parliament, thanking Gowin's party colleague Paweł Koel for supporting Ukraine. Poroshenko's election slogan was, "Live in a New Way Poroshenko." On May 29, the Central Election Commission of Ukraine announced that Poroshenko had won May 25 presidential election, with 54.7% of the votes. During his visit in Berlin, Poroshenko stated that Russian separatists in the Donbass don't represent anybody. "We have to restore law and order and sweep the terrorists off the street." He described as fake the planned May 11 Donbass status referendums. Presidency. When it became clear he had won the election on election day evening, Poroshenko announced his first presidential trip will be to Donbass, where armed pro-Russian rebels had declared the separatist republics Donetsk People's Republic and Luhansk People's Republic and control part of the region. Poroshenko also vowed to continue the military operations by the Ukrainian government forces to end the armed insurgency, claiming, "The anti-terrorist operation cannot and should not last 2 or 3 months. It should and will last hours." He compared the armed pro-Russian rebels to Somali pirates. Poroshenko also called for negotiations with Russia in the presence of international intermediaries. Russia responded by saying it did not need an intermediary in its bilateral relations with Ukraine. As president-elect, Poroshenko promised to return Crimea, which was annexed by Russia in March 2014. He also vowed to hold new parliamentary elections in 2014. Inauguration. Poroshenko was inaugurated in the Verkhovna Rada on June 7, 2014. In his inaugural address he stressed that Ukraine would not give up Crimea and stressed the unity of Ukraine. He promised an amnesty for those who do not have blood on their hands to the separatist and pro-Russia insurgents of the 2014 pro-Russian conflict in Ukraine and to the Ukrainian nationalist groups that oppose them, but added, "Talking to gangsters and killers is not our path." He also called for early regional elections in eastern Ukraine. Poroshenko stated that he would sign the economic part of the Ukraine-European Union Association Agreement and that this was the first step towards full Ukrainian EU membership. During the speech, he stated he saw Ukrainian as the only state language but also spoke of the guarantees the unhindered development of Russian and all the other languages. Part of the speech was in Russian. The inauguration was attended by about 50 foreign delegations, including U.S. Vice President Joe Biden, President of Poland Bronislaw Komorowski, President of Belarus Alexander Lukashenko, President of Lithuania Dalia Grybauskaitė, President of Switzerland and the OSCE Chairman in Office Didier Burkhalter, President of Germany Joachim Gauck, President of Georgia Georgy Margvelashvili, Prime Minister of Canada Stephen Harper, Prime Minister of Hungary Viktor Orban, President of the European Council Herman Van Rompuy, the OSCE Secretary-General Lamberto Zannier, UN Under-Secretary-General for Political Affairs Jeffrey Feldman, China's Minister of Culture Cai Wu and Ambassador of Russia to Ukraine Mikhail Zurabov. Former Prime Minister of Ukraine Yulia Tymoshenko was also present. After the inauguration ceremony, Tymoshenko said about Poroshenko, "I think Ukraine has found a very powerful additional factor of stability. Domestic policy. Peace plan for eastern Ukraine. Decentralization of power. Dissolution of parliament. Nuclear weapons. Decommunization and de-oligarchization. Language. Religion. Corruption. Foreign policy. United States. Russia. European Union. NATO. International. Post-presidency. In the 2019 Ukrainian parliamentary election, Poroshenko was first on the party list of European Solidarity. Police raid at Poroshenko's headquarters and gym. On December 20, 2019, Ukrainian law enforcement raided both Poroshenko's party headquarters and gym on the orders of President Volodymyr Zelensky. Hidden cameras and recording devices were found inside the gym, smoke detectors and security alarms. According to the State Investigation Bureau, those were allegedly secretly recording and filming Poroshenko's gym clients, some of which are politicians and businessmen. Poroshenko and Ihor Kononenko, deputy head of Poroshenko's party, are both owners of said gym and could not be reached for comments. The raid was part of two ongoing criminal investigations which are focused on two concerns. First, the alleged theft of servers with classified information. Second, the alleged tax evasion and money laundering. Durkok fragments. In May 2020, Andriy Durkok, a Ukrainian lawmaker who is aligned with a pro-Russian faction and has links to Russian intelligence, released edited fragments of private phone calls from several years between then U.S. Vice President Joe Biden and then President Poroshenko. Durkok used the clips to make a series of accusations not supported by the tapes. The taped conversations were consistent with official U.S. and European policy at the time and with public statements by Biden and Poroshenko. Durkok had met with Rudolph W. Giuliani in December 2019. Durkok's maneuver raised questions about foreign interference in the 2020 U.S. elections, and echoed Russian government's interference into the 2016 election. Biden's campaign and Poroshenko's political party European Solidarity described Durkok's act as a Russian attempt to harm Biden and disparage Ukraine. In September 2020, the U.S. Treasury Department sanctioned Durkok for attempting to influence the U.S. electoral process, alleging he has been an active Russian agent for over a decade, maintaining close connections with the Russian intelligence services. Anti-oligarch law. 2 days after the passing of the anti-oligarch law, which seeks to curb the influence of Ukraine's wealthiest individuals, Poroshenko sold the TV channels Prime and 5 Canal. Criminal case. On December 20, 2021, Poroshenko was accused of state treason, aiding terrorist organizations and financing terrorism due to allegedly organizing the purchase of coal from separatist-controlled areas of Ukraine together with pro-Russian politician Viktor Medvedchuk. If convicted, he faces up to 15 years in prison. Poroshenko denied the allegations, calling them fabricated, politically motivated, and black PR directed against political opponents. On January 6, 2022, a Ukrainian court seized Poroshenko's property. On January 15, 2022, Poroshenko announced via a video message on Facebook, "I am returning to Ukraine on a flight from Warsaw at 9:10 a.m. on January 17, to defend Ukraine from Russian aggression." Despite the case against him. Following his return to Ukraine, the prosecutor's office asked a court to either remand Poroshenko in pre-trial detention for 2 months, or oblige him to pay bail of 1 billion, wear an electronic bracelet, remain in Kyiv, and hand over his passport. The court chose a third option, which is less strict than house arrest and doesn't involve paying bail. According to this commitment, Poroshenko has to submit his passport to the authorities, not leave Kyiv or the Kyiv Oblast without first receiving permission from the court or the prosecutor's office, and inform the authorities if his place of employment or residence change. 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine. On February 25, 2022, amid the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine, Poroshenko appeared on TV with a Kalashnikov rifle together with the civil defense forces on the streets of Kyiv. He also stated that he believed that Putin will never conquer Ukraine, no matter how many soldiers he has, how many missiles he has, how many nuclear weapons he has. We Ukrainians are a free people, with a great European future. This is definitely so. On March 12, 2022, on the 17th day of the Russian invasion, Poroshenko personally handed over 2 civilian pickup trucks labeled Bandera Mobiles, in honor of controversial World War II Ukrainian Stepan Bandera, over to members of the 206th Territorial Defense Battalion of Kyiv. Both trucks were retrofitted with Soviet PKM machine guns, 450 bulletproof vests and decals of Bandera's face on the hood of both vehicles. At the end of May 2022, Poroshenko said he was not allowed to leave the country to visit Lithuania. Despite an official travel permit, he was refused entry to the border. Poroshenko wanted to attend the spring session of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly in Vilnius as a member of the Ukrainian delegation. However, he was later allowed to leave Ukraine at the Polish border to attend a political meeting about the war. Panama and Paradise Papers. Poroshenko was named in the Paradise Papers. He set up an offshore company in the British Virgin Islands during the peak of the war in Donbass. Leaked documents from the Panama Papers show he registered the company, Prime Asset Partners Ltd., on August 21, 2014. Records in Cyprus show him as the firm's only shareholder. He said that he had done nothing wrong, and the legal firm, Avelum, overseeing the sale of Roshan, his confectionery company, said that any allegations of tax evasion groundless. The anti-corruption group Transparency International believes that the creation of businesses while serving as president is a direct violation of the constitution. A similar explanation was given by current President Zelensky when he was named in the Pandora Papers. Personal life. Poroshenko has been married to Marina since 1984. The couple have 4 children, Oleksiy, the twins Yevgenia and Alexandra and Mikhailo. Oleksiy was a representative in the regional parliament of Vinnytsia Oblast. In November 2014, he became a People's Deputy of Ukraine with 64.04% of votes in constituency No. 12. Marina Poroshenko is a cardiologist who does not take part in public life, apart from her participation in the activities of the Petro Poroshenko Charity Foundation. Poroshenko became a grandfather on the day of his presidential inauguration, June 7, 2014. Poroshenko is a member of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Poroshenko has financed the restoration of its buildings and monasteries. In high-level meetings he is often seen with a crucifix. Poroshenko speaks fluent Ukrainian, Russian, English, and Romanian. Poroshenko is diabetic. Cultural and political image. Poroshenko has been nicknamed Chocolate King because of his ownership of Roshan, a large confectionery business. Poroshenko has objected to being called an oligarch, saying, "Oligarchs are people who seek power in order to further enrich themselves. But I have long fought against bandits who are robbing our country and have destroyed free enterprise." After promising in his election campaign to sell his business assets when elected as the President of Ukraine, according to Poroshenko and Rothschild Wealth Management and Trust, since becoming President of Ukraine, he has relinquished the management of his businesses, ultimately to a blind trust. Potential implementation of martial law. During his speeches, Poroshenko on numerous occasions called the war in East Ukraine a patriotic war, yet did not initiate implementation of martial law, for which he was criticized on numerous occasions by politicians and the general public. Poroshenko said it was necessary to realize the consequences of martial law for the country. It would restrict the supply of weaponry and items of dual assignment. The IMF does not provide funds to countries that are at war. A month later, the second statement was refuted by a head of the IMF's Ukrainian branch, Jerome Vacher. As for the possible introduction of martial law, the IMF has no formal legal restrictions that impede continuation of mutual cooperation under such conditions. We have already worked with a number of countries where war conflicts of various intensity unfolded. On February 5, 2015, in his interview with the Spanish El País newspaper, Poroshenko stated that he would introduce martial law in the event of an escalation of the situation in Donbass, but that such a decision would limit democracy and civil liberties, as well as threaten the development of the economy. Martial law in Ukraine was introduced for 30 days in late November 2018, after the Kerch Strait incident. Connections with Dmytro Firtash. In April 2015, Ukrainian oligarch Dmytro Firtash at a court session about his extradition to the United States stated that at the Ukrainian presidential election he financially supported Poroshenko and Vitaly Klitschko in the Kyiv city mayoral election. Mikhail Saakashvili. On May 29, 2015, Poroshenko invited former President of Georgia and his friend Mikhail Saakashvili to help with conducting reforms in Ukraine and granted him Ukrainian citizenship. The very next day after he became a citizen, on May 30, 2015, Saakashvili was appointed by the President as head of the Odessa Regional State Administration. On July 26, 2017, Poroshenko issued a decree stripping Saakashvili of his Ukrainian citizenship, without providing any reason. According to The Economist, most observers saw Poroshenko's stripping Saakashvili of his citizenship simply as the sidelining of a political rival. New Year vacationing in 2018. In January 2018, journalists from Radio Free Europe reported that for Poroshenko's New Year's vacation starting January 1, 2018 in the Maldives, 10 people who spent $500,000 to rent separate islands and the most expensive hotel in the country. On March 30, 2018, Poroshenko submitted his income declaration. Poroshenko declared that he spent between 1.3 and 1.4 million UAH on this vacation, half what journalists had reported.